Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru. And welcome to the Yogananda podcast, where we talk all things Yogananda and SRF. You've joined us on the Autobiography of a Yogi, line by line, where we're on chapter 9, part 6. So you can read along with us. We are missing Lauren today. Fortunately, she's not well, so get well, Lauren. We'll have her for the next episode, all being well. So with us today, we have the trio today, Priyank, Mike, myself. Hello, guys.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good to have you on board, everyone. We're on 3 different time zones across the world, talking about Yogananda, bringing it in digital. So if you do want to read...
Aren't you technically in the same time zone as Priyank?
Actually, yeah, you're quite right. I was going to say.
Yeah, Mike, Brexit, remember?
Yeah. You get your own time zone as well now.
Who cares? It's Central European time.
This is too much divine gypsy sort of traveling that I'm doing recently. My own time zones. So yeah, thanks. Good. Thanks for that, Mike. Good.
I got your back always.
Not the path. On the right path. So yeah, if you do want to read along with us, we've made it up to Little Sir, you were disappointed in that bioscope. And you can read all the way down to the final sentence of a paragraph that says, I felt that the falling shades of evening were sympathetically drunk with God. So we'll give you a couple seconds pause to pause the podcast and read with us. But for those who aren't doing that, who's just here to enjoy the show, we can then kick off with the first sentence. That is Master Mahasaya talking to Yogananda, young Mukunda. And of course, this is coming off the back of their adventures, really. They were in a university and Master Mahasaya was trying to show Mukunda some of the wonders of the world, electricity and a bioscope. And Mukunda was not best pleased. He was trying to hide his boredom. So Master Mahasaya knew that was the case, and indeed Divine Mother stepped in to help them along the way to find something a bit more exciting. So we're going to delve into it in a bit more detail here. So Master Mahasaya then says to Mukunda that he was indeed disappointed with the previous example of a bioscope, and he thinks that there's a different one that he will like a little bit better. And it struck me when I was reading this, why not? Why, Master Mahasaya knows what he's going to do, right? He knows what's coming. He's talking to Divine Mother. He's himself a realized saint. He's a master himself. And I wondered, really, he's taken this opportunity to be with Mukunda to give him this revelation, really, and I wondered why not. Mike, what's your take?
There's different takes. I feel there's one where you could say maybe the other bioscope was like a test, and he was trying to see if Mukunda was interested in that, and then he saw he clearly wasn't, and so he was, because he was actually hoping for something higher. Like when you see Mukunda's life, he's always looking for the spiritual experiences, right? He's very interested in all kinds of technology, as we saw, but really he's always looking for the spiritual thing in everything. Another thing that I thought is it was Master Mahasaya's idea to go to that bioscope, right? And maybe he felt like, I brought him here and he doesn't like it. I have to show him something else.
Are you not enchained? Also, I think it could be that Divine Mother may have given Master Mahasaya the go, because the previous one wasn't obviously satisfactory, probably to neither of them. But then he actually says, I've mentioned it to Divine Mother, and she's in full sympathy, with us both. So she could have also, reading between the lines, not just been in sympathy, but said, all right, also give him, now is the time to give him this experience. So maybe he wasn't even acting on his own whim as to when he knows when he should do it, as if he would know better than Divine Mother would.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's quite right. Divine Mother sort of seemed to have planned their escape, at least given Master Mahasaya the heads up to slip out when the lights went off in the at the university building. So they escaped the building, and now they're standing outside the university building, and Master Mahasaya gently slapped. And I thought that's a interesting choice of word, because it's quite descriptive, really. You can kind of see it happening, right? Slapped Mukunda's chest and over the heart chakra. So he kind of just slapped him. So with enough force to use the word slap rather than placed his hand or something. So
more like gentle patting. It must have actually been a little bit of like a winded kind of effect, like not a gentle place isn't a slap. They would have actually like felt the reverb,
the contact. Yeah.
And
I thought, why this? Like, did he actually have to do that? Did he I know we talk about the third eye, and when you get a blessing by the master, might use the third eye as a way of transmuting energy to it. And we know from previous texts in the Autobiography of a Yogi with these moments where it's actually maybe not necessary, but it's more of a physical sort of cue or something. But I probably think it's actually something of both. But what's your take, Mike?
I think you're right. It's more like because essentially I feel like Mukunda's life is a play, right, for us to see certain things, and by doing this in a material way with the body, kind of definitely shows us it came from him. It wasn't just something that came out of nowhere. It was something Master Mahasaya did for Mukunda.
Yeah. Yeah, but maybe why the heart chakra? It was perplexing when I was about this. Like, why, the heart chakra? He doesn't say his chest, the full stop, it's over his heart. Yeah.
possibly because at this age, that's the devotion element is the one that he's most connected with of the higher chakras, and obviously that one is most devotion and bhakti is most felt in the heart chakra. So maybe he's using the chakra which is his most akin to. I think later on, when Swami Sri Yukteswar gives him his experience, I don't know if it might have been in the heart as well at that point, actually, but Sri Yukteswar certainly gives him a similar experience later on, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was again on the heart chakra or if it was up here with Sri Yukteswar, but that's okay. It will come. We'll get there.
Okay. I think he might have tapped him on the chest. Well, I almost say thumped him on the chest there for some reason.
One of those,
yeah. So so here we have then the description of this kind of this miracle, right? This magical moment that Yogananda Bure exploring for us in such detail. So he says that this transforming silence ensued, and it's such a striking beginning descriptive way to start this. So why the silence? Why go into the silence? And of course, what he's saying here is he's able to observe everything around him in a dimension, let's say, that's beyond the gross, the immediate physical dimension. And so he's saying the first thing that struck him was the silence. And then he says about the analogy of the modern talkies becoming inaudible. And I had to ask the guys exactly what they thought this word really meant, this talkies. As Yogananda says, that this motion pictures when the sound apparatus goes out of order, that the auditory side of it cuts off, and we think what he was saying here was really, yes, these motion pictures back in the day maybe didn't have audio, and this is what he's referring to here, that he likened his experience with the moment where audio was just lost. Priyank?
I got reminded of the Awake film, where they used many old film footage, didn't they? And that always had some like accompanying music with it that didn't really go with the pictures, but they just had a some sound going. And yeah, so I think I've seen more old, in terms of old films like this. It's only in the Awake film that I've seen all of these old stuff, because he says modern. It's certainly not something that we watch anymore, is it? Just movies without any sound. But maybe it can, maybe it will have a comeback.
Yeah. Is it Birdman? Is that the film where there's not much audio in that? He loses his audio. I think that might be the case. There's definitely a more artsy kind of take for some films that have that. And Interstellar is another one where like there's some dimensional shifts where they play with audio and that as well. It's probably pretty good take on it for modern day. And Yogananda here says himself that by some strange miracle stifled the earthly bustle around him. So they're standing outside this university building. There's lots going on around them. There's carriages and horse and carts. There's people walking around, as he says, in iron-wheeled hackney carriages. So there's automobiles. There's a lot of noise around him, but he says by some strange miracle, everything goes silent. So it's as though possessing an omnipresent eye, that behind that he beheld the scenes behind him, in front of him, each side, as easily as those in front. So it's a very miraculous take of events. Grant, sorry, did you?
Yeah, automatically released my hand. I was thinking, when you go to India, Mike may know, the amount of noise on streets because of the traffic. Everyone, it's like the saying is like horn, is like as much as possible. It's like written on the cars, horn, okay, please. And so like if you're sitting, or if you're anywhere near a main road, then you have to hear like lots of commotion, whether it's like people like street vendors, or people selling stuff and with booming voices, or it's like temple music that's happening, kirtans, or as I say, the road noise. So but then when you come back to a quite quiet country like UK, and especially where I live, and that's one of the first things you notice when you're like walking or like in your house. There's no like insane level of noise as there is background noise as there is in India. So this would have, this transforming silence, it would have the first, during the Om technique, we cover our ears, right? So that's the first thing, is to block out the gross sound. So even that is a transforming effect, because then you can listen to the other sounds. And here, this transforming silence is twofold, isn't it? It's both talking about the grossness of physical sound, but then he's obviously talking about the higher sounds and the higher silence that's coming in terms of the stillness of his soul, perception, etc.
It is an interesting moment, because he still sees everything around him. So it's not like the actual physical form is lost to him. He can still see that, everything is clear as what he did a moment before, but the sound is lost. So I thought to myself, well, maybe is this a way to, show to Mukunda what is possible? Maybe because the light's still getting to him, so the shapes and everything are still there. So yeah, very, very, very intriguing moment here. And Yogananda goes on to describe that the whole spectacle of activity in that small section of Calcutta, was without sound, but there was a glow. This really intrigued me here, that he said that there was a glow of a fire dimly seen beneath the thin coat of ashes. This mellow luminescence permeated the panoramic view. And I thought that's such a beautiful, captivating sentence there, from maybe one of the more intriguing sentences of this whole part for me. That what is this glow? Brent, do you have an answer for us?
No, but I was thinking this whole section is a really beautiful description of the Sabikalpa Samadhi state that he's clearly, well, not clearly, but I would suggest that he's placed him in, or Master Mahasaya has placed Mukunda in, and especially that that message, that mention of like the divine hand, transforming this physical state into this supernatural, super spiritual, super conscious state that he's now in, and we know it's temporary, isn't it? So yeah, but I don't know, Mike, Chris, sorry, what that glow that you could be referring to is. But I can feel it. I don't, hard to describe it, but you can feel it when you read it, can't you, Mike?
Yeah, and I love how Gurji describes this so innocently. Like he basically describes exactly what he sees and feels. He doesn't judge it. He doesn't try to put it in a category like what is the the kind of scientific name for the state he's in here or something like that. But he's really just saying what he sees and what he hears. And like you said, we will have this again in another chapter. And then there's of course the beautiful Samadhi poem. And I I want I guess there's also different levels of Samadhi, one where you go in a little bit and one where you kind of feel it all the way.
In the previous episode, when Master Mahasaya told Mukunda that his master Ramakrishna Paramahansa always told him to meditate when he saw a large expanse of water, and we discussed previously, like the sky element as well. In our master's chants about the sky, the blue ocean of sky. So like all these, the five elements that we just talked about. Water. Fire is one of them, sky being the ether. So this one that he's talking about is obviously the fire element. So it seems that we can use any of those elements to connect more to our spiritual nature and cosmic consciousness, because we can. How often do we? Everyone loves looking at fire, don't they? When there's a campfire, we all love to just be hypnotized by the flames, and there must be something super spiritual going on, even as a meditation is quite a powerful one, isn't it? No one needs to know how to focus or meditate at that time, but everyone seems to be able to just be completely transfixed on a fire. So this must have some significance, this like a glow of fire dimly seen beneath a coat of ashes. A mellow luminescence permeated the panoramic view.
Yeah, who was it Yogananda was describing in just a few episodes back that saw was it a bird and a backdrop with the clouds, and there was a striking moment there where they cried with joy and ecstasy. Was it a bird? I'm misremembering. Frank, do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
I mean,
got another point.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just say mine and then we'll move to yours. Because I was thinking to myself, like, this is maybe God's glow. We're not able to see this in our, relative low state of consciousness when we're just going about our daily life and in this gross world. But if we could be in this super state of consciousness, that we would see God's brilliance and light, which is everywhere. Just it's only for us to see it, but it is there. So maybe this was more illumined in that moment where Yogananda could still see the physical gross form of the bodies and everybody moving around, but he'd more easily see this, the light of God that is in every atom, of existence. That was my take on it. But Preamble, your next point.
But my other point was that when we talked about the transforming silence that was issued, the previous sentence to this fire glow was that this small section of Calcutta passed before him without a sound, and then he talks about this fire. So it goes from like gross to subtle, and fire being obviously very subtle, and we think that it might be connected to some spiritual process without us knowing. So I was thinking that sound is definitely here, which just is too gross. Is a very gross phenomena, and as you go higher and and you elevate your consciousness to a higher state, then that kind of disappears. Like, Guruji describes how you disconnect yourself from the five sense telephones, and sound is obviously one of them. And in the higher states of consciousness, then you can be around a loud environment because you've switched off that sense telephone, and you won't get impacted by it. But I'm obviously not there. But it seems Mukunda wasn't there either, because he made it a point that like this experience, like Master Mahasaya kind of literally shut off that sense telephone for him so he could go into this higher state. And it's probably not just that, like we talked about his his actual spiritual eye, perception of the spiritual eye, and that went beyond the mundane physical things that are in front of him, and we're going to talk about that a bit later. So he must have done that for all his telephones, connections, to be able to experience this state.
Yeah, what a blessing that he's bestowing on young Mukunda, opening his eyes to this this other slight shift in dimension, almost, isn't it? What we're witnessing. And so Yogananda then goes on to describe that his own body, seemed nothing more than shadow, that it was motionless. So he was actually motionless, but everything else was moving around him, even though silently. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Did you guys read this as he left his body, or is like the kind of there is the state in meditation described in many of Yogananda's books where you feel like your soul is just above the body or something similar. Did you guys think this was what was happening here?
I didn't actually. Prank's nodding his head, but I'll disagree with Prank here. I actually think something else may have happened, because he goes on to say that whilst everything is, he's motionless, and his body was like a shadow. So he was saying that it wasn't, his body wasn't as it was before, but everything else was quite fine. It was, mutually to and fro. So it was going about as normal. And he goes on to describe that several boys who were friends of his approached him, passed him, looked directly at him, but didn't recognize him. So I don't know, my imagination may be running wild here, but I actually think that he may have not been there in the physical form, so that he may have been in a slightly different dimension of sorts, or an astral. He may have shifted into the astral where he could still see into the physical gross realm, but they couldn't see him, so he was not actually there. So I picture this in my mind's eye of like him just disappearing, but nobody really noticing, and then him kind of coming back in. So that's what I picture in my mind's eye. Could be wrong. Frank?
Yeah, and thinking about films that have portrayed this very well, the film Ghost, that ancient film. If you if you remember when he Chris, you haven't seen it? Oh,
I don't know. I need to look it up.
Oh gosh, it's a classic. So he kind of goes through this similar experience, but where Mukunda is completely calm and enjoying the state. He in that film, what's his name again? I forgot his name. Quite a famous guy. He
Patrick Swayze, right?
That's him. Yeah. He like really panics, doesn't he? He doesn't handle it well when he realizes that he's a ghost, and he's exactly as described here. He looks at people and they look at him, but they don't see him. And he tries to move things with his hand, but his hand just goes over physical objects. So yeah, I think in this film, that film is a bit of a cult classic, isn't it? But it's certainly, this obviously Yogananda wrote this way before that, so it would appear that this section may have influenced that paradigm, some of those paradigms in that book, in that film.
Exactly. Who knows? You could be speaking more truth than what you might think, Parag. Maybe not just in that film Ghost, but maybe others. And it's a really interesting point, isn't it? He's trying to draw our attention to the reality of the moment of he was there, but they either look straight through him, or if they did see him, they didn't recognize him. Whatever was going on in that moment, Yogananda did make note of for us to talk about and digest. And so he goes on then to say this pantomime, he describes it as a pantomime. And he often, Yogananda would talk about life as, the motion picture of life, right? And that's what he's touching on here, that this is more like a play, God's play, and we're all taking part in it. And so he talks about this as a pantomime, and that it's bringing him to ecstasy, inexpressible ecstasy. So he's drinking deep from a blissful fount, which is a really beautiful moment. That this isn't just a visual experience for him. This is a really transcendental moment where he's connecting with God, which is in this moment ecstasy.
Yeah, and we often say that these experiences are really hard to put into words, don't we? And we even said that you shouldn't try, especially not when speaking to people, members of the public, about this. I remember yesterday there's a monastic visit happening in London right now, and we were there yesterday, and some very new person was talking about his mystical experiences and his opening of his spiritual eye and things like that. And I was like, and he was brand new, so he doesn't know about all this stuff. So I gently told him, I was like, you should speak to the monks are here for that specific purpose, because he was very confused about what he was experiencing, and he probably wanted some reassurance. But obviously, I'm completely unqualified to give him that reassurance. But he was obviously struggling to put it into words, the experiences that he was going through. And he was using the words like Kundalini and stuff like that. But here, Guruji, he says it's inexpressible, right? Ecstasy. But he's just done such a fantastic job in these last 2 or 3 paragraphs here in describing it, expressing it in words, isn't it? So for him, apparently it is expressible, even though words often don't do justice to these profound experiences.
Yeah, I'll just add to that as well, that in different states of consciousness, when you come back into your regular state of consciousness, are you even able to understand? Like, are you really able to comprehend in a way? Like maybe you have a dream that you sort of lose the appreciation of what happened in that dream over time as your consciousness, the brain vibrates at a different rate. So
yeah, unless you're a master, right?
Unless you're a master, yeah.
The master of the experience. And then Mukunda at that time may not have been able to describe it in the words, such beautiful words as he had, but after going from the Sabhikalpa to the Nirvikalpa state, he can then now go back over his list of long line of memories and put it into the words that he actually felt and are actually appropriate for the English language, which is what we have here.
Well, maybe, sorry, Mike, do you want to jump in?
No, I just wanted to say that he first describes all the things that happened to him, and then he ends on how blissful the state actually is, right? And then we will see the reverse in a second, right? And then we will actually see how he enjoyed the state, right? It was a very desirable state. It's not just he can see people and stuff, but it's really a state that he would probably not mind staying in for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe Mike, you could read out the Bhagavad Gita quote for us. It loosely, relates to really what's going on here, because I thought, wow, what state of consciousness is he being exposed to? Really, is he being brought into by Master Mahasaya here? But maybe Mike, you could read out a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita for us, please.
Man's mind, operating as a part of nature's 24 elements, is engrossed in the material manifestations wrought by the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, which are subject to the law of relativity and time. The divisions of the timeless, eternal now into the progression of past, present, and future. To escape the flux of time, the devotee must rise to the spirit beyond nature's compartments of relativity. The absoluteness of cosmic consciousness is the only cure for the relativity of mortal consciousness.
I like the wording there, the cure. As if it must be cured, because it isn't the ultimate reality. Our daily lives, as Yogananda would highlight to us, and he's doing a great job here, because, as you said, Mike, the juxtaposition of being drinking from this blissful font to, you know, being an inexpressible ecstasy, to then having his chest suddenly struck by Master Mahasaya, again, bringing him back to this more worldly or mortal consciousness. And he says that he staggers. So it's a bit of a harsh awakening for him, as he says here. So this dream state that he was in before, and he was in bliss, he was enjoying it very much, and a new experience for him, for what we can tell in the autobiography of a yogi. And he describes this noise that Priyank sort of mentioned, you know, in India is pretty common. You know, this pandemonium of the world burst upon my unwilling ears. So he's describing it in such artistic form, you know, the shift from one state of consciousness into another. Priyank.
And this Master Mahasaya seems to have a on-off switch, doesn't he, for little Mukunda on this in this thing? Because like he tapped, you know, slapped him on the chest, gently slapped him on his chest, and it was on. And now another gentle slap, or this time is a soft blow, he calls it. Received another soft blow, and it was off. And I wonder, because we don't know how long it lasted for, but he probably, you know, before you're ready to, because this was like an experience that was bestowed upon him through grace, you might say, because for I'm imagining for the rest of us, if we go through this experience, it won't be like because the master's, you know, gently slapped us on our chest. It'll be in the midst of a 3-hour meditation, or perhaps even the second minute of a 20-minute meditation. But the point is, it won't be in kind of like this kind of scenario where someone's like instilling it into you. So how much, like, and in that scenario, we would have worked like quite hard to attain that experience or that state of consciousness. So we would be able to, so like, say, you know, you just you know, creeped over the precipice and looking over, and you know, because you're at that state, you can then, you know, come back down. You can't stay there, and that's what the definition of savikalpa is. But Mukunda here, because he's been given the grace, like almost externally, he has to as well be removed, because if it isn't removed, you know, we don't know what kind of impact it can have on him. It could probably jar his state of consciousness at the time, and he may not ever be able to like roam about freely in the world, insane in that sense. So he had to, we don't know how long he was capable of staying in that state in his current spiritual state as Mukunda, as opposed to a Paramahansa Yogananda, if that makes sense.
I think I remember another similar occurrence. That was when Lahiri Mahasaya goes to Babaji, and he gives, I don't know if he slaps him or if he knocks on his forehead or on his chest, but it has similar effect. And I think this is also an interesting scene, because it shows that we're not doing it ourselves, right? It's like that Guruji is very clear in when he goes to Sri Yukteswar later, or he's looking for a guru that reveals God to him, right? He's not, so it is kind of an external action that comes in, even if they're not here physically, they help you, right? And so this is just playing it out in real life, I guess, in this sense.
But Mukunda being an avatar, he's obviously consciously gone through this, like he's gone through our, you know, hardships in a previous incarnation, and as have all of the masters, and that's the difference between us and them. Like he's been born here having already, you established himself in that cosmic consciousness state, and hence his narrative is quite different to ours in our life, isn't it? This kind of grace that he's receiving from all these masters is a testament to the fact that he's come, as a prophet, as it were, on this to play out this Leela.
It's well said that, to be fair, because I was thinking to myself in my own, worldly consciousness, like, wow, imagine if you did have, to your point, Greg, actually somebody in your life, a master that gave you that experience, that did slap you over the chest, and you had this, imagine could you have this experience, what you would think of the master then that gave you that experience. You would be bound on at their feet, as actually would go on to find that's what Mukunda goes on to do. But you would want them maybe as your master, right? You would say, well, why not? Maybe that would be more of a worldly response to chase them as the guru. But Mukunda knows that there's more planned for him in a way. So he is very respectful of the process. And as an avatar, I think that's quite right. I think I would be a little bit confused as to who should my guru be if this person's in my life give me this wonderful experience. So yes, we look then to Mukunda saying that this transcendental wine was removed beyond reach, and that's such a lovely line, and tells us really what state he was in. He was in this sort of blissful, drunken consciousness on the ecstasy. It was
and this I haven't yet read Omar Khayyam and Guruji's translation on the wine of the mystic. I don't know if you guys have, but this transcendental wine is, I kind of get that vibe just from reading that book, and the fact that this wine was removed. These experiences aren't the goal. they're lovely to have, but the goal is to completely be in God consciousness at all times. So these lovely experiences aren't the reason why we are devotionally being loyal to the guru and doing all our practices and trying to be self-realized, as it were.
Yeah. And Master Mahasaya then is obviously observing Mukunda, and he says that, little sir, I love that terminology that he uses there, little sir. I see you find this second bioscope to your liking. So he's obviously observing Mukunda's state of ecstasy and smiling, as Mukunda calls him, a saint. The saint was smiling. Mukunda then starts to kneel. So he goes to kneel in gratitude on the ground before Master Mahasaya. And there's a strong rebuke, and it comes in quite firmly. So he says that you can't do that to me now. Master Mahasaya says to Mukunda, you know that God is in your temple also. I won't let Divine Mother touch my feet, though, through your hands. And so such a wonderful moment there, and I thought really a significant moment for Mukunda and his development on this path that we're sort of following the story, right? And a really beautiful moment between the two saints.
Yeah, it is really, really beautiful, really touching, isn't it? Because there's some people at the center, at the London Centre, that are very Indian, very connected with the Indian mindset and culture and traditions. So one of the humble devotees, whenever he sees one of the other people one of the other devotees at the center, he would bow and touch that devotee's feet. And even in the Swaminarayan temple where my wife belongs to, for her family, they've got this thing where whenever they pass each other, they both at the same time touch each other's feet, and with them it's more they just like half do it. So it's just like become like a thing. And I always, whenever I go there, they do the same thing with me. And the London Centre, the person, he literally goes down to touch your feet. And obviously it's completely, as someone who's far from perfect or not a guru or not saintly in that way, you can't stand it. And this, Master Mahasaya in here, he's saying that that God is in your temple also, so you won't let Divine Mother touch his feet. And here, whenever this person at the center does it to me, I feel so ashamed, if that's the word, because I don't feel that I'm worthy for that kind of like adoration. But if you take what's written here, i.e., God is in your temple and he's in my temple, even though I'm imperfect, he's still in my temple. So what he's doing is actually touching the divinity that's within you, even though you're imperfect. So he's forgetting, he's not glorifying you, but the divine that's within you. Then in that context, you should allow and reread. I've read this before, and I've always told this person off for doing that with me. But now in the future, I may have to reconsider after really deeply thinking about this after reading this paragraph. What do you think, Mike?
I read this slightly differently, but now that you're saying this, I'm on the fence a bit. So I thought he would have seen that Yogananda is an avatar, and so he would not want an avatar to bow before him. But of course, God is in all temples, right? So you could read it like that as well. Maybe that's the true meaning here. I'm always wondering, because I feel like Guruji, he goes through life acting like very innocent, but also at some moments you kind of figure that he knows who he is, right? And he knows his own state. And I think there's no like verbal tussle ensuing from this, right? There's just he just accepts this, even though Master Mahasaya just gave him this amazing experience. So I'm not sure. It's maybe in the beginning when I read this, I thought there's just this greatness, acknowledging the greatness in the other person, and vice versa, and that's why he doesn't want him to bow.
Yeah, it's such a testimony to the devotional temperament of the master, isn't it? Because in India, masters such as this, such as Master Mahasaya, are often revered in this way, and they accept their divine, the divinity that's within them, and their ability to grant grace and grant benedictions to their disciples. So they accept this devotion and obviously offer it to the Divine Mother that's within them, but they usually accept it. But he is so humble, and Guruji describes him as one of the most humble devotees he's ever met. And previously, when Mukunda wanted to put a garland around him, he says something similar. He says, "Since we're both devotees of the Mother, you can put this garland on this body temple as an offering to her who dwells within." And this is in this section here. This is another reference to that same thing where he's saying, that God is in your temple, so I won't let Divine Mother touch my feet through your hands. So it kind of literally is this humble nature, even though he's in full awareness of his spiritual state, is quite profound, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when he used the word now, you can't do that to me now. I read it that he's saying, look, you've just had this experience. You've been, in contact with God. This is a godly experience. You can't do that to me now. You know better, sort of thing. You can't deny it now, because Mukunda was crying out for Divine Mother to come to him, to manifest to him. And the way I read it was that there's no mistaking it now. You can't cry to say that you don't have confirmation. This is confirmation for you. So for me, it was just such an affirming moment in the Autobiography of a Yogi, and one that as you said, Mike, Mukunda doesn't argue with. So he just says that if anyone observed the two of them as they slowly walked away, they would suspect them of being intoxicated. So there was plenty of onlookers, maybe saw them sort of staggering away of sorts, both blissed out and enjoy. So that would have been quite the scene as well. And I thought there's a lot of content really on this, that Yogananda talks about being a spiritual alcoholic. And there's a great recording of Yogananda talking about becoming a spiritual alcoholic that we will play, but just before we go on to the recording, or maybe we can finish with the recording. There is just a final part really on this paragraph, and then a footnote. And it's very artistically said by Yogananda here that he felt that the falling shades of the evening were sympathetically drunk with God. So he was seeing the gross world in such a loving and beautiful way that was, let's say, the hangover of this experience that he was experiencing with Master Mahasaya. Right?
This drunk word and wine word and spiritual alcoholic. Mike, you've read the Wine of the Mystic, right? Does it draw on these kind of like ways?
Yeah, of course. I have a friend, and she's from Iran originally, and I asked her about Omar Khayyam because I was fascinated with this book that's maybe 15 years ago or something. And she was like, "Why are you reading this? He's just talking about wine all the
Oh no.
and I was like, okay, it's because I guess the spiritual meaning behind it might not be super apparent, and that maybe that's why Guruji wrote the book on him, right? To explain what he means by that. And it's funny that like you just said, Guruji uses all those words to describe the samadhi experience. He also uses the word ecstasy, and he like usually words that we connect with drugs or states induced by drugs, right? But I guess maybe that those are terms that we need to reclaim in a spiritual context as well. I don't know how to reclaim wine, but yeah.
Yeah, he's I don't know I suppose how many drugs could give you that kind of experience, right? Maybe what they scientifically, the community might come to
Probably zero.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. Frank?
Yeah, I'm sure we've all experienced a little dose of this this wine, shall we say, or the impact of this wine in our lives. But I personally, when I was very young, when I was a teenager, I did try some recreational drugs, so I could compare I could do a literal comparison, because they're both such because I didn't do it very often. I think if you did do it very often, then you might be dulled by the experience, and it might, like one of my friends, he was pretty much always high, so I doubt he would have been able to distinguish between this state and other than that. But I only did it a handful of times, and then later on in my life, when I've been through, like, had little glimpses of these kind of experiences that Master Mahasaya and Mukunda are talking about, and then I really, you hold them so dear, really, really dear to your heart, and they're so vivid, so such that you can actually use them as a catalyst for deepening your meditations in the future. So if you do have these experiences that Mukunda is describing, even if it's like a fraction, it will be of course it will be a fraction of it, but you really have to remember it, and it's really important to journal those experiences, because you really want to use every tool at your disposal to not just stay in that state, but to reach that state and go beyond later on in your life.
Yeah. So brother at Lake Shrine often mentions that when you want to go deep in meditation, just remember one of your deepest meditations you ever had and start from there. And I think that's a powerful tool.
Yeah, nice. And Master Mahasaya used the word bioscope, and it's used quite a bit, right? And the footnote on this section is Webster's New International Dictionary from 1934. And it's specific because it's changed since then. that it gives this word bioscope a definition of a view of life, that which gives such a view. So this is Master Mahasaya's choice of word of using bioscope, and the experience that he gave Yogananda was really a view of life. Beautiful, isn't it?
Does anyone else feel that it was really mystical? One of the rare times that a dictionary definition is really embraced a mystical dimension in this way, a view of life, that which gives such a view. It's quite profound.
Yeah, I think it's an old word for camera, right? Bioscope. And a bioscope show, I guess, would be an old word for a movie. And this is such a beautiful word for a camera, I think. This is like you capture life, you look at life. So I don't know why we chose another word afterwards, but yeah, maybe it was too long, a mouthful.
Yeah. I think Yogananda shares that even back in when he was writing this, because he said it was peculiarly justified. It was very peculiar. So I think he shares our perspective on that. And so we have this recording then, and we can end with this. So before maybe we do play it, guys, that was such a beautiful one of the moments in the autobiography of a yogi that made me anyway sit back and drink it in, for want of a better word, but really take it in to think, wow, there's something so amazing and significant about life that is just waiting to be discovered. And when I was reading this, I had an experience of yoga and had an experience of meditation and things like this. So when I was reading it for the first time, it captured my imagination. And there's moments like this, just dotted throughout the autobiography of yoga, and I just thought this was definitely one of them that really makes you sit up and take notice that there's something beyond the veil. So yeah, beautiful moment. But anything else you guys want to cover?
Yeah, just quickly. This is it's sufficiently small in this section that you can spend a long time on it, as we have one episode pretty much on this in this experience that he's had. Because if you compare it to later on in the the experience in Cosmic Consciousness chapter, where Sri Yukteswar gives him this experience, it's infinitely more detail, and there's a colossal poem, and he really goes to town. It's virtually a whole chapter, isn't it? That section. So here and because it is small, it's very easily digestible, and you can probably even memorize this if you wanted to. This the 2 or 3 of the important paragraphs in this section, and really just meditate on that. And you can't really do that for the chapter that's coming later in the book, because it's just so big. It covers the whole of his existence, doesn't it? And that probably is because that's like he gets into that state of nirvikalpa samadhi, perhaps. I don't know.
He describes the mysteries of life in so many different ways, and I suppose whether you enjoy the more mechanical, mathematical breakdown of it, or the more artistic, breakdown of it, he plants the seed, and he sort of captures you in one way or another, Yogananda, and he's done that here for us. But let's play Yogananda's audio and listen to dear Guruji himself, and he can take us away. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
This life is a test. Why did Christ say that ordinary people seek the world, but all who are wise seek the kingdom of God? Because there is your happiness. There is your fulfillment of all the dreams of incarnations. That's why you should learn to meditate, become a spiritual alcoholic, where you will be so drunk with that joy that you will be able to do other works of the world and yet not be mixed up with it. So you must practice the presence of God, and in Kriya Yoga is one of the greatest proofs of the existence of God. Practice Kriya, and you will not suffer from moods. You who love experimenting with so many things, why don't you experiment with yourself and Kriya Yoga? In the calm, concentrate your mind in the spine, and there you will find, as one person wrote to me, I suddenly found my breath gone, and I settled myself in the spine and had the great visitation of the Almighty, ever new joy of God. God is ever new joy. In the mirror of his sphere, you will find the universe glimmering.